Hi, everybody. Aloha, as they say here in Hawaii. I hope you're having a great day. So, as you know, we're going to talk about the new 9 to 5 makeover and specifically the importance of personal brand. If you're a job seeker and what that means as you're trying to stand out in the job search. So I do have slides that I'll share in a little bit, but I did want to say that, this is just going to be a pretty casual talk about, just what we mean by personal brand and how that will enhance any of the things that you're already doing in the job search, or if you're a working professional, things that you could be doing to stand out even more. Okay, so I'd like to start with just a quick overview on job search tools. I think traditionally many of us who've been in the workforce or perhaps just joining, we have like a toolbox of things that we use, right? So we have typically a resume, and it's an awesome resume. Hopefully it really speaks to our strengths and our experiences. I know that most people, once they have the resume, they're getting called for interviews and they have really good prepared interview responses set up, and they know their story that they're going to share, etc. Perhaps you've also, included in your job search just a network of people that you hold close and that you value for your, just bouncing off ideas or looking for advice or even providing you references. So all of these things are super important still. I don't want to say that personal brand blows all this away and you don't need these things anymore. Absolutely not. You still need these things. But I would say that in today's market, just from the perspective that I have, which, I've hired on behalf of organizations, Fortune 500 companies, smaller business, mom and pop organizations, startups throughout the globe, I've seen what hiring managers and companies like to have in a candidate and what the difference might be between a good one and someone they hire. So one of the things, that I do want to say, and it really speaks to this whole discussion about personal brand, is, the mindset that many of us have had over the years of how we approach the job search has been like, okay, I'm going to get all my stuff together, my presentation materials, apply online, do all these things, but, I'm going to submit it as an application and I'll wait. And I'll wait for someone to call me. Hopefully someone will call me instead of leaving me, in this abyss of non-response. And I know that happens today, that like sometimes you'll apply and you'll never hear. So that's unfortunate, of course. But certainly I feel that job seekers have really taken advantage of, what the tone is in the job market now. And that's all about developing their personal brand and really doing it so that the mindset is not, I'm going to sit here and wait to be called and chosen, but that I'm also, when you're thinking about my stuff, I'm going to go out there and also promote myself to some degree and be more active in the search. So with today's mindset in the job search, what we see as it ties to personal brand, people, it doesn't matter what occupation you're in or industry, a lot of people are in the space of promoting themselves a little bit more than in the past. And when I say self-promotion, I don't really mean it in a very, very showy way, like look at me. But at the same time, you are bringing attention to your message and what you want employers to know about you. And this is where it's really important and really sits at the baseline and the foundation of what personal brand is for job seekers. So we're going to take a look at that right now. So let me just share some slides. And I do want to say that feel free to type in questions in the chat. I will probably save them and not look at them until later on, but I know that Andrea and others on the chat, they might call out the questions if it's really relevant to what we're talking about, but feel free to do that. And I'm going to try to save some time at the end to go over those questions. Okay. So let me share my screen. So I just want to say to people, when you hear this idea, this term of personal brand, what does it mean to you as a job seeker? You know, if you want to put some comments in the chat, that would be great. I know for myself personally, when I heard of this idea of personal brand, I was like, oh yeah, I know what that is. It's a resume and it's a LinkedIn profile and maybe a headshot, and that's my brand. And so I'm curious to know what people, you know, what your thoughts are when you hear this idea of personal brand. So you can put some comments in the chat, or, you know, if you don't want to do that, you could just journal it and just think about it because it's important. Okay. So when we talk about this idea of personal brand, okay, I'm going to see, I see some people are in the chat. Excellent. So Reagan says values, how you present yourself. Absolutely. I think of brand as your image and marketability. Also, Tiana, thank you for that. That's awesome. And yeah, absolutely. All of these things come to mind. So when we're relating it to being a job seeker, there's a lot of things that speak to that. And it's not one tool or one resume or your headshot. It's far more than that. It's really the themes and things that you need to be integrating and weaving into the various tools and how you present yourself to a future employer. So, you know, in a nutshell, I believe that your personal brand encompasses these 5 things, okay? And some of them you might be pretty comfortable with. So the first is authenticity, credibility, visibility, and then also service and social proof. And we'll talk about this pretty quickly in a few minutes. Okay, so authenticity is pretty, you know, much what you think it sounds like. Basically, it's what are you known for? Who are you professionally, personally? You know, it's really your signature statement about who you are. You know, are you a person that people love working with, or do you have a way with diverse individuals that people always come to you because you're that glue that holds the group together? Or are you more, you know, in the background, but a really steady presence? Like, you really need to have a sense of what is that authenticity about you, because it's a story that you're going to communicate throughout the various tools, your resume, your interviews, people that are helpful to your search, that sort of thing. The next element of personal brand in the job search would be credibility. These are things, actually, credibility is something I think that everybody, if you're a job seeker, you're pretty well skilled in this area. Like, this is all about your qualifications, your experience. You know, I have a bachelor's degree. I have 15 years of experience. You know, this is my expertise. I'm trained in XYZ. We know these things as job seekers really well because this is how we've been taught to speak. So the thing is that personal brand is far more than just credibility. It's also going to include this idea of visibility. Visibility is really who is aware of you. So for some people, this means, you know, like, who's aware of the type of worker that you are and the expertise that you bring. A lot of times for us, it's people within our own company or within our own departments. But sometimes, and especially nowadays, we see job seekers really expand beyond just their immediate company. They're joining groups that might be serving the industries, and so that people within your professional space are familiar with what you do, or community groups, something that broadens your audiences. And this ties to the last 2 concepts of the personal brand themes. So service and social proof. Social proof I'll address first, and we'll talk about it a little bit later in the slides, but basically what social proof is looking at is it does tie into visibility. It's not just what people are saying, the people that you know or who are familiar with your work, but it's also people who don't know you, They might have seen you from afar. They may never have met you, quite frankly, but the idea is that personal brand to some degree does involve this, and it can be a great thing, a very powerful thing, as well as a negative thing in some cases, but the idea is that it's a powerful thing to think about and to contemplate when you are considering what your personal brand is. The last S is service, and basically we're talking about missions personally for you that go beyond just the individualistic mission as a job seeker. Yes, you want to get a job. Yes, you want to make bank and make money, right? But a lot of times our stories now have to talk about how we're helping other people and how that affects and improves the lives of others. So we'll talk about this a little bit more. Okay, so as I mentioned, as job seekers, we've been conditioned for many years to say, hey, I'm great at this, so you should hire me, and this is why, blah, 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 right? We're great at rattling off the qualifications, but what I ask all of you to do is the first tip in thinking about brand and thinking about integrating it into your job search activities. You want to develop a personal brand statement. So your brand statement should be thinking more along the lines of, I help X so that Y can be accomplished. So it might be something like, I help, families, plan meals and, plan activities so that, everyone is feeling well balanced and such, or you might be an accountant and you're helping organizations really stay steady to their operations and improve, whatever the case might be. It's not stuck in that statement of what we've been told of like, okay, well, I graduated from college, I have 5 years of experience, what else do you need? It's a lot more deep than this. So consider, what is that statement for you when you're thinking about your own brand statement? Okay, so one thing that we are seeing in the job market today, and certainly for many years now, as we said, it's more of an active approach. So beyond the resume, beyond LinkedIn profiles, we are seeing people share their point of view a lot more. So they are taking more of a content creator approach is what I call. And really what I mean by this is that you're sharing things beyond like your resume on an application. You're actually on different platforms or different media websites and maybe sharing your point of view. We see things from sharing posts and articles to people that you might be connected with, that like, hey, this is really interesting and this is what I think about it, as well as people who take it a step further and maybe share actual articles that they're authoring, that they're posting on various platforms like LinkedIn or Medium. They're taking these opportunities and actually sharing a little bit more, and which offers a window into their world. Okay, so it's more than just, I like to say it's bringing your paper to life, your resume to life, so people can learn a little bit more about you. There are other platforms in social media that are really powerful right now as well. I mean, certainly, on YouTube, anyone can start a YouTube channel and create videos on whatever topic you desire. I know lately, within the last year, Clubhouse, if those of you who aren't familiar with it, it's a drop-in audio platform where people join, and there are topics that are run by different clubs and rooms on pretty much anything you can possibly imagine. And people who are interested in that topic also join it, and they have conversation. It's a great way to share your point of view, network, and meet other people of the same interests. But these are things that people are sharing and actively doing for content creation. So the third tip that I say is, we talk about how important for your brand having the right connections are, but beyond that, beyond building a good reference, you want to build your squad. You want to build your people who are your own personal board of advisors. And it's not just for now because you're looking for a job and you want this person to give a reference, but you also want to build people that you trust and have that relationship with others that can help you with various points in your career. And you want to stay in touch with them. So it's, not something where it's a favor that you ask every few years, but you really have an ongoing dialogue. So some of you already have this. You have maybe a former supervisor or manager you work for, or someone you worked with. Those are great people. The key here is to stay in touch with them, let them know what you're doing. So when they are talking on your behalf, they are familiar with what you do and the quality of work that you've done. I'm also a little bit biased, but I always think, since I'm a recruiter, I think every squad should have, a recruiter or someone who's in the market that they know what companies are doing, and they can kind of share their advice with you on who's working on what salary ranges seem to be, etc. But certainly you want to have this team of people that you're in touch with, that you're talking and discussing your goals with on an ongoing basis, okay? And then, let's see. The last tip that I'll give is, it's again built into this idea of action. Certainly you might not be the world's greatest author and not feel comfortable writing articles or, really going center stage, and that's fine. The idea though is you have to think of ways where you can raise your visibility. And they can range, the gamut, quite frankly. You can stretch and actually say, this is the year where I want to be a speaker at a conference. That's great. Do that if you feel like that's what you'd like to strive for. But sometimes it can be a lot less grand. You can choose to volunteer meetings, lead meetings. I know that many meetings I attend are run by the same people. So, it might be something where you're volunteering for extra opportunity, where you are put in a position where people will see you. And maybe it's volunteering to do extra leadership in a certain area, like guiding work or mentoring others. That's super important and is very accessible. But also, outside of your own organizations, you can choose to, lead and participate in groups that are community-based around your profession, as well as if you're behind the scenes, say you don't want to do any of that stuff because, you're not an extrovert or a leader in that sense, or at least you don't see yourself, you can definitely contribute by sponsoring events or helping coordinate the production of an event, being a volunteer check-in person, just so that you're meeting more people and that people are familiar with what you do and what you're interested in. So these are all things to consider, these 4 tips. Certainly if you're not already building articles and, on every single platform, that's okay. But I would challenge you to take one of these 4 tips and think about, okay, so the tools that I am using right now and that I have in the job search, what can I do to integrate these 5 brand elements and themes, and how can that be improved? So with that, I just wanted to share real quick. I love connecting with people on LinkedIn, is usually the best place, but certainly I'm on different social platforms as well. And it is about 20 minutes after, so I'm gonna stop there and look at some of the questions that have come in. Okay, so, great. Okay, so I think Michelle had posted a question, and feel free if something pops up, just type it right in. How long should you give a resume, or after you give a resume, should you follow up? That's a great question, because sometimes when you apply, you don't hear anything for quite some time, or you hear things right away. I would say that, once you submit a resume, it's probably good to follow up on that resume and your application. I would say within, 5 days, 5 business days. You don't necessarily want to do it right away. I know that many recruiters certainly are busy. That role is typically not the only role that they're recruiting for. So they typically are working a few different ones. So they're trying to get through things as quickly as they can. But it's always a good idea to just kind of follow up. And so I know that some of you might be wondering, hey, so like, who should I follow up with, right? Because a lot of these places don't say who. And this is where some of the detective work and proactivity on your end is going to be helpful. I know that a lot of candidates that I've worked with personally, they go on LinkedIn or they go on some sort of social platform to find people at the company they applied to, and they look specifically for a recruiter. If they can figure out an idea of maybe the role went to this recruiter because it's an accounting and finance recruiter or a technology person, they typically send a note and just say, hey, following up, this is me, like this is my name. I'd like to know if you received it and anything additional that I might share. It's always helpful to do that. I will say not everyone will answer you right away, but at least many people will versus you not doing a thing and just waiting. So that's what I would recommend. Let's see, on a resume, what about for those who have less work experience like myself? And how do you format it in the resume? My career path is media and entertainment, and that's from Chantel. So that's a great question as well. So for those of you who have less work experience, this and in a specific area, this is where it's going to be helpful to do a couple of things. You're going to need to one, highlight the training and expertise that you bring in that area. Say maybe you studied it, perhaps you did an internship or you got a certification of some sort. You want to highlight that in terms of it being your offering for experience and to qualify you into a role. But as far as, other things to consider and put in that resume, you want to think just about other skills and characteristics that might be helpful in that particular line of work, right? So, if you know that you're interested in a field where there is a lot of people interaction or high-paced things going on, you want to call out those things in your toolbox, basically. Anything from a work experience, an internship experience, a volunteer experience, education, whatever, and include that somehow into your resume, okay? And in terms of your question about how to format that in the resume, not 100% sure what you mean by that, but I think a common question that's come up is, do I put that at the top or do I put that at the bottom? And really, I think the traditional method is that if you don't have a lot of experience, you talk about first your education and some of your training up front. And that is good advice. I think it's solid. But I think also it really depends on what else you're putting in your resume. Okay, so if you do have an internship for a summer or one part-time job or a one-week externship doing something, you're probably going to want to put that right next to or after the primary part, which is really your, what you studied or your interest, because you don't really have the hands-on work experience. Okay, so let's see. So the question, no, you definitely put your work experience in the resume for sure, but I think specific to, people who don't have a lot of experience in that preferred field, you want to start likely with your education or things that, really showcase the connection, that you do have some connection and some, awareness and ideally experience, or that you've studied that field first. And then anything else right after that, and it typically is a work experience section right after that. So certainly you do put work experience in a resume. It's just the placement, I think, is the question. Hopefully that helps. Any other questions? Let's see if I missed anything. Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because this idea of personal brand, like I said, sometimes people think, gosh, it's something I hadn't really thought about, because all we need to get a job is have a resume or apply online. But it's more than that, and people nowadays are doing more than that. I can't emphasize it enough that it's really helpful if you know your story and know what you bring to the table. And it isn't all about just how you're qualified, right? It's about a really interesting life story that shaped you and why you're pursuing this particular field. And that's a message that needs to come across in the various tools that you have for the job search. So seeing a little bit of that in the resume, but also talking about it in your story when you're interviewing with people, when you're networking with people, when you're talking to your references saying, hey, you know, this is really important to me. This is, you know, it'd be great if you could talk about this. These are things that you need to be aware of and integrate that into your story. Okay, excellent. So Erica, okay, so we have a question from Facebook. How many times should you follow up if you don't hear back regarding a position? Are there too many times? That's a great question. Okay, so I'm going to share with you my personal opinion. And of course, just take it as, you know, what I've seen and what I've done and seen others. I would say no more than 3 times. So, and, you know, you don't want to bombard people right away. I mean, just like, you know, calling you on the hour every hour, you probably wouldn't appreciate that too much, but give it some space initially. You know, I say like 3 to 5 business days, or, you know, 5 business days is fine, but like certainly 3 days is fine reaching out. You know, also just like a few days after that, probably another 3 to 5 days. And then last, if you don't hear anything, you know, I think it's safe to assume that they are moving on. But this is also a really good opportunity. Like if you find someone, say on LinkedIn as a recruiter, that, you know, you want to make a connection with and they get back to you, use it as an opportunity to stay in touch, like really stay in touch with them. Like, I want to check in with you from time to time about opportunities. Is that okay? Can we be connected? Because a lot of us don't do that. It's like the objective of finding a job and then like, that's it. But really it's about relationships and the people that we're knowing. Okay, so I think we have one more question before I think our time is up. What about for people who don't like to spend too much time on social media? How can I be a content creator if I'm not super into social media? Perfect. That's a great question as well. So I will say a couple things. I would definitely encourage you, even if you're not on social media too much, just try to use it in a different way to help forward your social profile and spread the message about what you do professionally. I would say just try it a little bit more, because honestly, this is what people are doing now. So even if you don't do it at all, you want to try to dip your toe in the pool a little bit more. But I would say what's super important about brand, there's other pieces, right? So it's not just the platforms, but for content creation, it's really not so much the creation of things or posts, but maybe it's new relationships, maybe it's new organizations or opportunities that you're choosing to volunteer for that will put you in touch with people that are in your line of work and that you can get to know them, and that, you know, they become familiar with you and they'll know what you're looking for. But really creating these new opportunities, be it digitally or not, that really speak to promoting yourself and what you're hoping to get into is important. Okay, so I think those are all the questions for now. Thank you so much for the questions, everybody. You know, feel free to connect with me as well on social. You know, I'm happy to connect and chat offline, but, you know, I thank you so much for attending today and hope you have a great rest of your day.